Has anybody at any government level said they're sorry about anything during the pandemic? Is there any other form of a controversy where there never is a sorry?
Nothing of this magnitude.
How about war? They've created a virus that can get the whole world sick. They hold a solution, a vaccine that everyone must take. They hold power.
An internist, a cardiologist, and your work with vaccines.
About 20 vaccines cause brain inflammation, and some kids end up having permanent neurologic damage.
Is it an obvious correlation to the number of vaccines with everything else we're seeing, in particular autism?
Vaccines have unavoidable harm. Once it's injected, it's like, good luck. I am telling you, is dirty business.
Tell me why I should trust the Trump administration, RFK Jr.
There's a dirty history behind this.
That gives me chills. What regrets do you have?
I would say
here's the thing. I am absolutely beyond excited for this opportunity. First of all, to finally meet you in person. But I feel like I know you from all the live television that you've done over the last 5 years. You are definitely TV famous as well as in other ways in the medical industry. But Dr. Peter McCullough, an internist, a cardiologist, and I didn't know that part. What I knew was basically your work with vaccines and what has happened to this world really since 2020, since COVID. So I can't wait to dive into it. And it's not just, okay, COVID, what happened? It's about the lack of trust, where we all are now after learning the truth. And the truth continues to come out. So I want to be, looking forward here, not just revisionist history, because it's productive to a level, but I'll get mad. So we need to look ahead. And so before we do that, we're starting here. And he's like, wait, I want to start with sports questions instead of, is that what, are you going to put me on the spot?
I want everybody to know, this is my only chance to ask these questions because I've been watching her on ESPN Sports forever. So I knew you way before you knew me.
That's amazing.
And of course, what does every guy do? We watch Sports Center.
Well, you used to.
Right? And so I have to ask you, so if you watch sports,
yes, sir.
Let's just talk about the major sports that are played. In your mind, are there things that come up to where the sport could be improved?
Oh, gosh.
Okay, let's just take hockey.
Okay.
Okay, hockey. What's the problem with hockey? I'd say two problems.
The game itself or the reception of the game?
The game.
It's so hard to watch because of the speed. Which is what makes it great, too.
Well, I would say two things. One, there's too few goals.
Yes, like soccer.
Okay, so how do you solve that? The goal should be a little bigger. Okay, so you and I, if we were to go in there right now, we tell the NHL, just make it a little bigger.
And the goaltenders are like, absolutely not.
The goaltenders are huge. And I know they have regulations, but it seems like their pads are getting bigger.
They are. I think they are.
When you look at a goal, you can barely see any net because they're so huge. I think the goal should get bigger.
I don't disagree. Yeah.
What,
I don't disagree.
Don't disagree.
Yeah.
Okay. Now the other problem is you mentioned it's so fast. At times, I go to the Dallas Stars games occasionally, and then I'll watch it on TV. At times, it's so hard to see the puck. It's moving too fast. Solution: I think the puck needs to get a little bigger. And probably have one of those little lights in it so you can really see it. Those little kids have toys and lights in it. Okay. I think hockey, that would be solved. Let's move on to baseball.
You think so because of that, the ratings will increase because people want to see touchdowns, they want to see home runs.
They want to see scores. Same thing. You do not
because the ratings struggle sometimes in hockey unless you get to the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Well, there you go. You don't want an entire period where there's no scores.
Yeah.
I don't think in any sport. So I think hockey would solve it. You'd have more scores and you'd be able to see the puck. Now, let's take baseball. What's the problem with baseball? This one's obvious.
It's slow.
Well, it's too hard to hit the ball. If I gave you a bat,
I guess I've appreciated that in golf. Here's the thing. There's not an appreciation for how difficult that is.
It's so impossible.
It's incredible. We were talking about Aaron Judge the other day and how incredibly beautiful his swing is. And certainly he's 6'7" and he's a powerful guy. But we take for granted because what do we see in the highlights? Every once in a while we'll see a defensive play, a web gem out in right center. But otherwise, home run, home run, home run. So I
like-
think that we've desensitized people to how difficult it is.
Well,
but the slowness of it, that's why they're trying to speed up the game.
I know, but some baseball scores, it's just, there are many innings where there essentially are almost no hits. That's the problem.
Like Hopkins.
So I think it's too hard to hit the ball. That's my general problem with baseball. And I think solution, just move the pitcher back a little bit. Move that pitcher's mound a little bit back towards second base.
I cannot stand complicated skincare routines. I don't have the patience for 5 different products and steps and a shelf full of stuff. But lately, I've been doing something really simple that's actually made a difference. I've been using beef tallow on my skin. And the brand I keep going back to is Amalo. They make a really clean product. It's 100% grass-fed and finished tallow with just a handful of high-quality ingredients. No junk, no fillers, no long list of things that you can't even pronounce. They're also a family-run business. Everything is made in small batches here in the US, which I really respect. You can tell there's intention behind it. And the product, it actually works. I've genuinely noticed a difference. My skin feels more hydrated, it feels smoother, and just overall healthier. I do use it on my face, all over my body, basically anywhere I get dry spots as well. There's a reason over 500,000 people have already tried it. So if you're looking for something simple that actually works, this is absolutely worth trying. Go to amalo.com/sage and use code SAGE for my special discount. That's Amalo, AMALLOW.com/sage. So you want everybody to soften up?
Just make it a little bit easier to hit the ball.
Make them soft.
Yeah, make it a little bit. Boy, then now the outfielders, and they say, listen, there's a, in any given inning, there's going to be some balls up in the air.
But the traditionalists in that sport in particular.
Well, traditionalists would wipe out all of these arguments.
All of it, yes. And the strategy that goes on around it. I mean, if you're a baseball fan and you're watching and you're at the game, because you can't do it on television, right? Unless you have alternative cameras and alternative broadcast feed. But when you're there watching, and if you have a good seat, and you're watching what's happening in that dugout, while you're looking at the bullpen, while you're looking at the players' communications with their signs, it's fascinating. But most people don't know what to look for and don't have the ability to see all of that every time. If you can do that, I'd watch it all day.
Do you think baseball's overcoached?
I've never thought about that.
You have to have somebody tell you to run from first to second. You can't make that decision on your own. Come on. I mean, it's just, it's overcoached. Do you think you have somebody have to tell you throw a curveball instead of throwing a slider? I mean, it seems overcoached.
Well, football's the same way when you have quarterbacks with the speakers in their helmets. Can't you trust Aaron Rodgers to just go do it? I mean, you'd think so.
Okay.
So
that's baseball. That's baseball. Well, you have good answers for all of these. Let's move on to basketball. Okay. Oh my gosh. And let's just restrict it to pro basketball.
I was going to say NBA.
What's the problem? There's 2 problems in pro basketball. 2 problems. What are they?
One thing that, personally for me, one thing that bothers me, there's one thing that's more overarching and one thing with the game itself. I just hate the last 2-3 decades and the reliance on the 3-ball now. I want dribble, drive, passing, post play. Depends on who's on your team, of course. But everybody, because of Steph and Curry, is just tossing up threes. And then you have kids in their AAU games. They don't know how to make a layup.
Okay, so you bring up a good point. So the players' capabilities change, but the game itself doesn't. So
but
the end product
officiating has changed so much too.
Well,
Remember
we're going to get to that.
The 80s, 90s, the bad boys, and I love that era. You got Bill Laimbeer, and they are crushing each other down low. They let them play. They were allowed to be physical. And now, I mean, it's controversial if you let them play. I'm like, let them be men. So I don't like the way that I feel like gotten softer in that way and tightened up all the rules, and there's constant whistles. But that's me being old school with basketball.
Okay. So I think we're not totally agreed on this. I would say it's way too easy to dunk. I mean, I remember when I was a kid in high school, if one kid could dunk, I mean, it's what? How did the human body develop to be able to dunk a basketball so easily? I've hardly met anybody in pro sports, but I had a chance to meet John Stockton.
Oh, wonderful.
Now, he's not that much taller than I am.
He's not.
And the first question I asked him? I said, can you still dunk it? And he said, yes, he can. But the point is, I think overall, I would vote move the basket a little bit higher. Let's just.
So you want the basket higher in basketball. You want the goals wider in hockey. You want the pitcher moved back in baseball. So you want hockey and baseball to be made easier, more entertaining, and basketball harder.
A little less scoring. Because a lot of times these scores, I mean, come on, I follow the Mavs.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it doesn't seem like they're playing defense. When they're scoring 120
no,
points
but
a
they
game.
don't really play defense until March.
Okay, so now the second
It's
thing
so
on
annoying.
Second thing on basketball, this thing that really, really bothers me, traveling. Oh, come on. It should be 1, 2, up. Not 1, 2, 3, sidestep, 4, 5. I mean, they travel as soon as there's a decision to go to the basketball. It seems like traveling is limitless. Sometimes they take off almost at the top of the key.
Yeah.
It's too much.
No, I agree. And then sometimes it's not called. But the Euro step has changed the NBA with the inclusion of so many guys from Europe, right? And it's a 1, 2, 3. Like it looks weird too, because it looks like it's in slow motion. It's interesting because I don't know. I mean, I think it's called the Euro step for a reason. And I mean, remember when there was such an intentional effort to bring European players to, and Toni Kukoc was like a big deal with the Bulls. And now, I mean, this is why people hate that Jokic has won so many MVPs. Like, well, they're taking over our game. And then the Olympics, though, it's much more entertaining now. You know, it isn't just utter domination. I mean, eventually, usually by the U.S. So I agree. I agree with the traveling, and then most importantly to me, not most importantly, one thing that always has bothered me: call the game the same in the fourth quarter that you do the first.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Because I hate it. Then all of a sudden, now that the game is tight, we're gonna follow the rules.
Right.
Be consistent with everything. Be consistent.
Okay, last one. I got to get off my chest.
Yes,
this is very therapeutic for me. You know, if you ever listen to sports talks radio. Have you ever listened to these guys and they're on the radio and they'll have somebody on said, I've been waiting for 2 hours. I got to get this off my chest. In the top of the 7th inning, he should have thrown a curveball at the first pitch. I mean, these guys, there are people who live and die sports.
I know.
They do. So, and sports are so good because it's such a relief. It's in general, sports is happiness, it's interest. I think sports play a huge role. But I saved the hardest sport for last.
Wait, real quick. The reason you are so right. That's why I, at 11 years old, wanted to be a sportscaster.
Wow.
And as an Army kid living in different countries, I realized at that time sports was the ultimate uniter, and nothing else mattered. Your race didn't matter, sex, your socioeconomic status, your politics, nothing mattered. We were a team, and it was the most diverse place you could go. Even
and you
then.
were a breakthrough.
That means I'm old.
You were a breakthrough. Yeah, you were a breakthrough.
Ish. There were certainly a lot of women who came. I mean, Robin Roberts, most importantly to me, just because I thought she was excellent professional, and that has never changed. No matter, she's Good Morning America News now.
I think all of you,
but
it's you and Michelle Tafoya. There's so many.
Michelle is incredible too. But when I got out of college, 1995, there were no
breakthrough.
There were not that many.
Well, we saved the hardest sport for last, and we're going to finish the sports, and then we'll get into viruses
I think this
and
is
medicine.
The show. This is all we need.
But the hardest one is the NFL.
Which part of it?
So there's been a lot of changes in the NFL, and you could pick a lot of things. And I have a solution. You're not going to like it, but I have a problem. Pass interference. I just said it. Pass interference. Pass interference. How many games are changed by PI calls?
So many. And they're so and it's subjective. That's the problem. And then it's like, well, where was the official standing when he saw it? It's subjective. And sometimes it's a tap and they call it. And it's like, oh, he tapped him. He didn't turn his head. If he had just turned his head, then we wouldn't have called it. He didn't turn his head. Other times, 2 arms wrapped around and there's nothing. And it goes back to basketball. Be consistent with the call. Make it really clear. At the beginning of every season, all the referees go around to each NFL training camp and update them on some of the potential rules changes and some reminders. And then the guy's like, yeah, whatever, because depends on the crew. Depends on the call.
Well, you probably listen to a lot of announcers like I do. And if you ever notice, there's some announcers that make a stand. They actually make a call. And there's others that are kind of wimps.
Oh, yeah.
And the wimpy announcers, they kind of wait for the referee to call. And they'll say, the ref was right. That was just hand fighting. Or, the ref was right. He was shielding. It's like, wait a minute. Make a call before they go to New
Yes,
York.
exactly.
It drives me nuts, these kind of wimpy.
There's very few, it's just like everything else right now where everybody goes, oh,
They don't
I'm
want to go
afraid
against the
I'm
refs.
Right. Listen, Jeff Van Gundy, who I've always loved, he hates me now, but it's fine. Because, when you speak up on certain things,
Right.
they block you and delete you. I'm like,
Right.
that's manly. I can put that aside. And I loved when he was on ESPN and ABC. And it would tick off the league half the time and half the fans, but he did that. He did his job. He gave his analysis as an expert of the game, of the call. And then he, bitch and moan in some people's eyes. And I was like, well, but he said it. And then what do you find yourself? You're arguing with Van Gundy. It's fun.
Yeah.
And he was honest. And so was his brother Stan, who also hates me.
Right.
But like, I have such respect for the guys who are unafraid to call it out. But the majority of people, color commentators in all sports.
They're kind of weenie. Now,
They don't say
of the
anything.
guys right now up as color commentators, who's your fave?
Based on the
everything, just all around. That you would, if you watch an NFL game, you would hope he'd be
oh my
there.
gosh, how am I blanking on his last name? Greg. So embarrassing.
Greg, the former tight end.
Yeah.
Greg Olsen.
Greg Olsen. He's a friend of mine. I'm blanking on his
really?
I really like Greg Olsen. He's he's not the obvious person that people want you to pick. He was in that top spot before Tom Brady came in for a reason. He's worked his butt off. He's younger in it. Kevin Burkhardt, play-by-play, is excellent and underrated for football, for baseball.
Man, I've really got you going. This is fun.
I mean, I
this is so fun.
Now, are there
all my friends are going to be so proud that I was able to do this.
This is so impressive.
But
also, and Reese Davis, who is an incredible host of College Game Day, he is excellent as well with play-by-play, not color commentating, obviously. But there's so many. It is so hard.
You're probably going to not like my pick, but I'm from Dallas, and the reason why I'm picking him is because I think the way his voice is, he makes it exciting. So making football is exciting.
Oh no.
He also has the hugest dimple in his chin of all time. Who am I talking about? Tony Romo. Oh, you got it. Yeah, Tony Romo. And he just, I don't know, to me, he makes the game exciting. But we have to get back to football in PI. What's the solution for pass interference? How do we solve this? Anybody?
The human element is part of it. And it's just like that in every single sport. There's a yellow card and a red card in soccer. And
are you saying the refs have to do better? That's just...
I mean, what's the alternative? Robots?
I think you're close.
But they want that obviously with baseballs making changes and the machines looking at balls and strikes.
Everybody's going to go nuts on this, but this is going to be my suggestion. That I think they better start running AI on every play. And every player becomes AI, and you come up with AI algorithms to say, were they obstructing, were they not, were they pushing? You could measure all this. Were they, listen, hear me out. And so what would happen is AI would run in the background. It would go into the ear of the ref. Now the ref cannot go and hang out and look on the screen call New York for help. The ref has got to have this real time. And then the AI is saying, probability of PI 99%. And then it's just going to support them. And AI supported decision.
AI is also biased.
Well, I know, but what I'm saying is, I think it can do it. This is so hard. How many times is pass interference? It's like, okay, I'm going to get up and get some more chips during the commercial. When I come back, no, I'm going to study the replay. It's like, I'm a fan. I have to study the replay, and then I have to come up with my own determination.
But everybody wants this perfection, and then they want the games to speed up. And
I think AI is the way to do it.
I don't. Well, you still have to. You're saying so AI is going to be immediately into their headset. So basically, we don't need humans.
No, it just AI is going to assist. Getting AI. Hey, listen, I'm a doctor. AI is assisting. It is helpful.
Do you know Roger Goodell?
No. Mm-mm.
I was going to say, let's get you in contact with him.
Anyhow, thank you for.
This is its own show. What we just did here.
Thank you for.
Because
I finally got this off my chest.
No one else, it's hard to have these conversations.
Has
with so many
anybody
people.
ever suggested the things I did?
No.
There you go. And I'm
now
just
wait,
a doctor.
I've been out of the everyday sports for 2.5 years.
So you've been around sports for a long time.
So I'd like to, and I obviously I still have so much passion for it. But who knows? Maybe there have been more conversations. I've just been choosing to focus on other things as well. I don't even watch as many games, Dr. McCullough. I don't.
Really?
I don't.
Hmm.
And I think I, no matter what you do and how much you love it, and for my entire life,
Mm-hmm.
for 30 years when you have to know every stat, every player,
Oh,
every
yeah.
team, every coach, like every sport on
You really
SportsCenter.
can't miss the games, can you?
Yeah, I mean, there's ways through technology where there's no way to sit up all night long
I know,
and
but the
watch
big
every
games,
game.
I mean.
Yeah, the big games. But listen, Monday Night Football, and if I had to be up at 3:30 the next morning when I was doing morning SportsCenter,
Mhm.
and you're on the East Coast, so it ends at midnight, and then you have to prepare for the rest of your 3-hour show, there's only so much you can do.
It's
You have to
really
pick and
hard if
choose.
you're working to watch Monday Night Football. I know it's a problem out there, but there's got to be a solution. For the West
It's
Coast, it
perfect out west.
starts too early probably for them. Central, it's a bit late. I go to bed early, and we don't have Dandy Don to signal when the game is over with. Do you remember when Don Meredith used to
Oh
signal us?
my gosh.
Remember it was
Yes.
Frank Gifford, Howard
Yes.
Cosell, and Dandy Don
What an
Meredith.
incredible booth.
You know what
that
he did?
was.
When the game was over, he said, "Turn out the lights. The party's over." And he would just, when he sang, my dad would say, "The game is done. Dandy Don has proclaimed it."
That's amazing.
It's, sports
there's-
is great.
this
You've done
is the-
such a great thing in your career.
It's been the biggest honor. It really has, to have this dream as a little girl when girls didn't do that. It's been and the most, I've had so many people supporting me along the way, and since I left too. But I feel like I got to do so much more than I ever dreamt of, which is why I don't miss it. Because I feel like now, because of that, I get to do this. I get to meet people like you who, okay, segue, who
Turn the page.
you very much helped. I know you hear this all the time. You get stopped in airports everywhere you go, and you've done probably thousands of speeches just in the last couple of years. Do you stop and think about the difference that you are making in the lives of everyday Americans, and even outside of our country? How often do you stop and think about it?
In many ways, each one of us could never have predicted that something would come upon us in which we could or would or actually did play a role. This is very important. What came upon us with the pandemic and what's followed undoubtedly qualifies as a great controversy. A great controversy. And to play a role, in many ways, I feel like maybe I was tapped to play a role in a time of a great controversy where there was confusion and suffering and sadly disability and death. And to play what I think is a positive role into such a negative wave of developments has been the greatest honor of my life.
You've probably heard me talk about OneSkin before, but I'll be honest, this is one of those products that really changed how I think about skincare. I've never been somebody with a complicated routine. I need to keep things simple for me. But at a certain point, you start to notice your skin just isn't keeping up the way it used to. That's exactly where OneSkin came in for me. It actually works differently than anything else I've tried. I've been using their OS1 in my daily routine, and what stood out to me right away wasn't just the lightweight, super clean feel of the product itself, but that over time my skin actually started to look healthier, look smoother, more even, and a little more firm. And it's good at this age. Let me tell you why it works. As we age, some skin cells, they call them zombie cells, they stop functioning properly. That's what leads to things like fine lines and dullness. And OneSkin's OS1 peptide was specifically designed to target those cells. So you're not just masking the signs of aging, you're actually addressing what's causing them. It is simple, it is effective, and it's something I've even recommended to friends. They're now using it too. OneSkin's results are backed by 4 peer-reviewed clinical studies, over 10,000 5-star reviews, and they've been recognized by Bloomberg as a leader in skin longevity. You really don't need a complicated routine to get healthier, younger-looking skin. Born from over a decade of longevity research, OneSkin's OS1 peptide is proven to target the visible signs of aging, helping you unlock your healthiest skin now and as you get older. So for limited time, try OneSkin with 15% off using code SAGE at oneskin.co/sage. That's 15% off oneskin.co with the code SAGE. And after you purchase, they're going to ask you where you heard about them. Please support this show, the Sage Steele Show, and tell them I sent you. I love that you look at it as an honor, even though it has been quite costly for you in many ways. I actually want to get to that later because I know that that's not your focus. I mean, you're doing this for much bigger reasons than...
Well, listen, you look terrific. Doesn't she look terrific and in shape? I'm much older, but I'm in great health. I keep myself in the best shape possible. If we're not having pain or suffering and we're alive, then the level of injury, really, compared to people, I mean, I have patients, you can't imagine how their lives are physically and medically damaged. There are people, there are small business people who put their whole life savings into a business. And when their businesses closed down to the pandemic, 60% of those businesses never came back, including the family business of my co-author, John Leake. To this day, I can't hardly even mention his family's restaurant business on Greenville Avenue in Dallas. He says, Doc, he goes, don't bring this up.
That hurts.
It hurts so bad. People had their entire savings wiped out. I mean, think about that. People had things happen to them where they became completely disabled. Let's say a stroke. And a stroke can happen actually after the infection, can happen after a vaccine. What if you had a stroke and I was coming visiting you and you're paralyzed on one side? You think about that. So I don't think we've been harmed. And you know what? When it's time to play big, things happen. And I've always felt, listen, I'm big enough and strong enough for it. People change jobs. People reinvent themselves. In many ways, we're better for it.
No, I think so. And I think if you don't try to find the silver lining in all of this, I mean, you will be a depressed soul because there's a lot of darkness. And I think that's what I have learned. Hesitated to go deep on some of it because it's scary. And then we talked about this earlier. Once you see this, you can't unsee it. And then to me, you have a responsibility for your family, yourself, your family, your loved ones, potentially friends who might listen, to at least share what you have learned, all of us, and then make your own decision. But if we are uneducated, gosh, to me, it's inexcusable in this day and age when we have the ability to learn so much.
Well, wait a minute. You left off one thing. Do you have a responsibility as a public figure, more than just your family and friends?
I feel absolutely.
There you go.
And what do you know? You're some sports chick. Yeah, you're right. And I'm still a mother, a wife, a daughter, a sister, a human being, a friend. And I've lost a lot of friendships, and there's been tension in the family for some of my opinions. And this is not a woe is me. I'm one of millions. And if that's all I've experienced, I am so lucky. But the point is, I feel like now, honestly, my husband will tell you, I know why I was put on this earth. That is to be mom to Quinn, Nicholas, and Evan, as much as I annoy them to this day. And because I have this God-given platform. And now, finally, at 53, no fear. The fear is pretty much gone to talk about things. And if I save that with this platform, shame on me. Especially when it's scary. That's when you know you have to speak. It just took a while, and that's okay.
How many public figures, especially in your circles, have had things happen to them through the pandemic? No word.
Silence. Oh, 99% of them.
Tons of them. And what happened to public figures when they expressed some concern?
Well, we all know you are shut down, you're canceled, you're deplatformed, you're fired.
Yeah. So I did a Twitter poll on this. People were frustrated. They saw public figures, sports announcers, my favorite college sports announcer, Kirk Herbstreit, my favorite weatherman, Al Roker. Yes. I mean, the list goes on and on. I did a Twitter poll. I said, why aren't they speaking out? Because if it happens to them, wouldn't they feel a responsibility to warn others? And the answer on the Twitter poll was very interesting. It said, they've already lost so much, they've had personal suffering. If they speak out, they believe they'll lose even more. So it's already a loss.
Listen, and it's true. I understand that. The fear is real. I lost a lot. Things that are intangible and more important than money too. And again, I'm fine. I wouldn't change things. So this is not a sympathy grab, like absolutely not. Okay. And everyone has to make their own decision to do what's hard. We know it's the right thing. It's easier to stay silent. It's maybe smarter to stay silent. It depends on what is most important to you.
You know who came out and went public? He actually, believe it or not, he visited me when he came to Dallas. He came over to my dinner, my house, and my wife made dinner for him. Eric Clapton.
Really?
Eric said, listen, and Eric's very open about this. Eric's had a storied life. He's done all kinds of things that medically were inadvisable. But he takes the vaccine and he can't play the guitar. This neuropathy is so bad, he cannot play the guitar. And Eric speaks out. He goes, listen, I took the shot. I was doing the right thing. I wanted to go on tour. He goes, I can't play.
Oh,
he goes, this is what I do. He's probably one of the greatest guitarists of all time.
Oh my goodness.
And he was slammed, canceled, crushed. The UK media. So this isn't just the United States. This is the UK coming out. And so he wanted to meet me and go over what happened. And he did some great songs. One of them was called Enough's Enough. And just as, and what Eric explained, he said, listen, these musicians nowadays, with all the electronic sources of music, whatever, he says, it's pretty hard to just make money in the studio. You got to go out and tour. And so he had me meet his band when they did their first tour since the lockdowns. And they came to Dallas. Dallas was the first place they had a show, and I had a chance to meet the band, watch a practice, and we got to know each other, and met his personal doctor. And I give Eric great credit for just speaking out. So any of these others, but people have suffered obvious vaccine problems.
But that's what is still suppressed. That is still what I think obviously the mainstream media and certain platforms don't want you to talk about.
But you know what most of the figures will stand behind? The shield of their doctors. My doctor said the vaccine had nothing to do with it. My doctor said COVID had nothing to do with it. This is very important. So this denial that the virus or the vaccine has any role in what we're seeing now that's in mainstream medicine. I have patients go to major institutions and they say, listen, I didn't take the vaccine. I've got a giant blood clot from my ankle to my hip. I just had COVID-19 illness 2 weeks ago. I think it's related. And all the studies would show it's related, that the part of the virus is stuck in the blood clots. It causes blood clots. The doctors will tell them, no, it's not due to COVID whatsoever. Like what? So there's a denial of the pandemic. There's a denial in the medical community of the whole thing.
But deep down, don't they know now? I mean, you can't speak for every doctor. I saw something posted on X just yesterday. And this, I didn't realize the video was from 2018.
Yeah.
But it's the former head of the Cleveland Clinic who was just talking about the flu vaccine. This is pre-COVID, and in tears, describing what he didn't know and then didn't share about the risks and just the flu vaccine. And he was in tears and being accountable. What a concept. So I feel like these were discussed in quiet circles away from cell phones that might be listening, et cetera. And I retweeted it today because I just thought, I mean, this is 8 years ago, but he was being accountable. And what we have failed to see is the majority of the medical profession being accountable for what they chose not to do, to see, and to tell us, which is their job.
Has anybody at any government level of a public health agency or the White House, or any major leader at a major medical center said they're sorry about anything during the pandemic?
I haven't heard any, not one.
Okay.
It's just move on, next.
Okay. Is there any other form of a controversy where there never is a sorry? This is very important. Where it's a part of this thing that happens to humans where they never say they're sorry. Never. Can you think of one?
Nothing of this magnitude, of course.
How about war?
Mm.
Does anybody say, listen, I'm sorry, we shouldn't have gone to Iraq?
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, Vietnam didn't work out. Or I'm sorry, Korea. War. The program is no apologies for war. Whether you win, whether you lose, whether it's a draw, no apologies. And in our book, Vaccines, Mythology, Ideology, and Reality, the back part of the book is what's called the bioweapons era, where we liken this idea of the use of vaccines and even the pandemic as a wartime activity. And in the 2004 BioShield Act and the 2005 PrEP Act, all the military terms come out and say, you know what? If we have a pandemic and it is a biological threat, a biological catastrophe, military-like actions will be taken. The government will have countermeasures. They will be enforced. There'll be freedom of liability. This is all memorialized in legislation that's over 20 years old now. The pandemic, the way it was handled worldwide was as if it's a war. Now, if there's a war and they tell you, listen, shut down your business, and you go out of business, they're going to say, we don't care. If there's a war and you lose your job, they don't care. If there's a war and you're injured due to some civilian contact with bullets, sorry. If the tanks come down your street and they start mowing over your shrubberies and your house or what have you, there's no apologies. If there are lives lost in war, there's no apologies. Civilians, large numbers of them dying. We have an example of this right now in the world for the last 5 years. Large numbers of civilians, clear civilians, in large numbers dying. No apologies.
Never.
None. So I liken the pandemic to a war. That's the reason why there's no apologies.
That gives me chills.
It was considered like a war. In fact, when the COVID-19 vaccines were rolled out, they were rolled out by the Department of Defense and Health and Human Services. They actually brought that forward as an offering. And to this day, do you know the vaccines are government purchased? Why? What else does a government purchase for you? What item in your life does a government provide to you free of choice? Just a COVID booster.
Spring has sprung, but before you launch into spring cleaning mode, also consider using this change in season to check in on your health, specifically your gut health, because when your gut is healthy, so many other things in your body start working better too. That is exactly why I've been paying more attention to products that support gut health in a real, meaningful way. The brand I love is Cowboy Colostrum. You've heard it before. What stood out to me right away is the quality. Cowboy Colostrum offers the highest quality bovine colostrum available in the US, 100% made in America from grass-fed American cows. And they use true first-day whole colostrum, and that's where all the good stuff is. I'm talking about naturally occurring bioactives like immunoglobulins and growth factors, the things that actually support your gut in a meaningful way. And something I also really appreciate, they only collect the excess colostrum after baby calves have had their fill. Cowboy doesn't strip or over-process their product. It is whole, full-fat, high-protein colostrum for maximum nutrient density. When your gut is supported that well, it impacts everything: immunity, skin clarity, hair strength, nail growth, energy levels, and yes, reduced bloating. So these are not subtle changes. They're results that you can see and feel. It's also, by the way, really easy to use, and honestly, it tastes good. No artificial flavors, just clean ingredients with options like chocolate. That's the one I always choose. Madagascar vanilla, matcha, and I love strawberry too. I'll just throw a scoop into my coffee or a smoothie, and that's it. So for a limited time, my listeners get up to 25% off their entire order. Just go to cowboycolostrum.com/sage and use code SAGE at checkout. That's 25% off when you use code SAGE at cowboycolostrum.com/sage. So this was strategic.
Well,
War is strategic.
Many are investigating the planning for this. People started to invest. Now, I had no idea there was pandemic planning. When I went to medical school, there was never any discussion I was chief of cardiology at a major university. I was a chief academic scientific officer, an entire health system, program director. I had held all these positions. I had never gone to a secret meeting where they say, we're getting ready for a pandemic, and this is what's going to happen. I never got an email. Nobody ever sent me a video saying, listen, you better pay attention when a pandemic comes. Now we're getting mandatory training. Well, what happens is there's a fire. Well, you grab a fire extinguisher, grab it, pull, aim, spray. I mean, they make you go through all these modules, right? So there was never a module about what happens when a pandemic comes. Turns out that pandemic preparedness planning has been a government business, both on the science side and the military side, for at least a couple of decades. And the best book to quote on this is Peter Breggin, COVID-19 and the Global Predators, We Are the Prey. And I wrote the introduction for it. Breggin, in the timeline in the back of the book, highlights 36 pandemic preparedness planning events for this pandemic. Planning 36. They go back to about 2004, BioShield Act being one of them. Of those 36, 24 produce written documents that you can read. 6 of them are videos. You can just watch the planning event. So as we get forward, I mean, the one that really caught my eye, someone sent it to me, was in 2017, the Gates Foundation and Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. They hold a roundtable exercise, major leaders in healthcare. It has proceedings, slides. They produce an over 80-page monograph. The title of the program is The SPARS Pandemic, a coronavirus pandemic that's going to hit in 2025. And it said, listen, there's a theoretical coronavirus. It's going to come out of China. It's going to get everybody sick.
This is what year again?
2017.
2017.
Okay.
And predicting it for 25?
Predicting for 2025. Now, it says, well, there's going to be great controversy over treatment, but the solution will be a vaccine. We're going to roll out a vaccine for everyone to take. We're even going to get the president of the United States to promote the vaccine. It's all in the SPARS pandemic. So when the pandemic breaks, what does Johns Hopkins do? They actually published this in 2 peer-reviewed papers and said, we called it.
Oh my God.
It's astounding. Now, the next one, again, is Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health and Gates Foundation. This is in November of 2019, 2 months before we know about this. And that's called Event 201. Now, Event 201 is filmed there. You have George Gao, the Chinese CDC director. You have many other public health officials there. Importantly, Avril Haines, who was at the World Economic Forum. She became our Director of National Intelligence later on under Biden. She's there. And they say, for sure it's going to be a coronavirus. It's going to hit. It's going to come from China. In fact, George Gao and Avril Haines' section of Event 201 is, how do we actually message that it came from a lab? How do we do this? How do we cover it up, actually? And that's Event 201. That's 2 months before it happened. So when people start looking at this now backwards, we say, wait a minute, the virus potentially came out of the Wuhan lab in the summer of 2019. This was actually a real this was a real operational meeting of what was
in November of 2019.
Right. And both of these, the conclusion was, position treatment as being futile, the virus is unassailable, and the only solution will be for global vaccination.
How much was Anthony Fauci involved in any of those studies, discussions, from what you know?
He's not mentioned, but it's clear in the pandemic preparedness events that his group at the National Institutes of Health is called the National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Diseases, NIAID. His group was funding Ralph Barrick at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, who's the most published person on coronaviruses in the world, to create primordial SARS-CoV-2, create this virus. Here's the virus. So the virus is a ball. It's what's called the nucleocapsid, and there's spikes on top. Now, throughout the history of mankind, there was 4 of these that we could actually cause a cold, a very mild cold. And what they were working on was how to engineer this spike protein so where it could be invasive. Prior to this would not invade the body. You'd get a little sniffles, but it would not invade. The spike protein was intentionally manipulated through Fauci's funding of Ralph Baric and the Chinese lab to directly invade human cells and be lethal. And what we've learned now is there's no ability for the human body to break this down or get rid of it. It's called the spike protein. The ball is the same. The ball doesn't hurt us. That's the nucleocapsid. Is all the damage from the illness. You say, why would something benign like a coronavirus, kill a senior citizen, which it did? It's because of the lethal spike protein engineered in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. This is all in the U.S. House of Representatives Subcommittee on Coronavirus Investigations. This is all part of U.S. Governmental investigation. Every single U.S. government intelligence agency agrees it came out of the lab.
So when you look at the why behind this, I think that's why so many people have had trouble and just, no, this couldn't have been intentional. No, who would do that? I get that. You don't want to believe that, in my mind, there's evil in the world that exists in this area. We see it elsewhere, but not here. Not when it might come across as intentionally trying to harm people. What's the why? Why?
In Barrick's experiments, a notable one was published in January of 2015 in Nature Communications, and then in January of 2016 in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. And one of the things I've done, I've testified in Congress numerous times, multiple state houses, is I cite the evidence precisely so we can go back and every single piece of information can be viewed and examined. But in these papers, it says this is gain-of-function research. We're trying to make this virus more infectious and more lethal. It's occurring under Obama's ban on U.S. funding of this, so therefore we are outsourcing it to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and they thank the Chinese for their collaboration. And they indicate that this is an attempt to get ahead of nature. So almost all of this pandemic response, biolabs, the whole theory is, well, nature could throw us something bad. So if we create something even worse than what nature can create, we can be ready when a pandemic hits. And it goes back to 1918 in the Spanish flu, where it did have tremendous mortality. We had no answers back then. We had no modern medicinals. And sadly, people didn't die of influenza. If you read the descriptions of it, we have a chapter in our book on this. They actually died of secondary staphylococcal pneumonia. Mm-hmm. So if we just would have even had antibiotics, we wouldn't have had millions of people die of Spanish flu. Mm-hmm. But the point is, the scientific community now has become incredibly enthralled with this idea of biological threat research. And Peter Daszak, who was at EcoHealth Alliance, who was a go-between between Fauci and the NIH, Baric, and the Chinese, and he had been to the Chinese lab many times. He said he had left many more samples over there. So what does he have? COVID-20 and 21 and 22. It's unbelievable. But listening to his testimony, this is kind of what I would infer reading between the lines. The group who holds a biological threat in their hand, they've created a virus that can get the whole world sick from a single sample. And they hold a solution, a vaccine, that everyone must take. They hold power. This is power. It's pure, raw power. Can you imagine the negotiating power here? How about these geopolitical conflicts? Can you say, Mr. President, we'd like to talk to you about the tariffs. We have COVID-20 ready to go. We think it could be spilled on a New York subway. Do you think we could talk about these tariffs? Can you imagine the power? Or what if you're a company? What if you're a company, a biotech company, and say, you know what? We've got this virus and we've got a vaccine. Whoops, it got out of the lab. We've got a vaccine that every government must purchase. Think of the raw power of this. This is far more powerful than kinetic weapons, nuclear arsenals. This is unbelievable. This can reach all over the world. I mean, not even a nuclear warhead can do that. It's astonishing how powerful it is. And so recently at the World Economic Forum, there was a statement by one of the leaders there. This is a place, by the way, where a lot of the bad guys go.
Yeah.
And very rich bad guys. They said, the COVID-19 pandemic was a wonderful test of global compliance.
Yes.
Compliance. Were you compliant? Were you compliant?
Yes. And I will regret it for the rest of my life. And I think I'm okay from it, and my family members. But the principle of it, and I think that's what's hard to grasp, is that there are people who are so power hungry that they don't care about the death and destruction that it literally causes. No one wants to talk about the vaccine injuries. Fortunately, people like you and many others are out there doing that. They don't want to talk about the people whose businesses were lost because their life savings were put into it and they're gone and shut down and never seen again. In some of these areas that they say they care about so much, in Detroit, and the hypocrisy is thick. And that is what I have reluctantly come to realize, is that there is true evil in the world because they care more about the power and the money than people's well-being and lives.
Has it ever happened before where some giant corporate entity was making so much money, they truly did not care about human health, and they intentionally suppressed any information about their products for decades? Any examples? How about smoking? Oh yeah. The tobacco industry, the all-powerful tobacco industry. 1950, 80% of this country smoked. Doctors did, nurses did. They had doctors smoking promotional programs in the office. RGR Reynolds, American Tobacco Company, Philip Morris. Doctors could hand out cigarettes to their patients. Doctors opined on which cigarettes were the best in their opinion. Doctors were engaged in the advertising. Smoking was big business, big business. And when the first doctors in the UK, courageous doctors, said, we've got a concern, this doesn't look good, looks like it could cause lung cancer. Oh, they were dismissed. Oh, go do some research and come back. They came back, they did the British physician smoking study. They showed convincingly smoking was causing the death of doctors. They still were rejected. The tobacco industry tried to smear them. If they had Twitter accounts today, they would have had their Twitter accounts suspended. They would have been knocked off of YouTube. If they were ESPN announcers, they would have been booted. Yes, and so Richard Dahl, bless his heart, he lives long enough. It wasn't until 1993 where they said, you know what, he's a hero. From the time he made the call in 1950 to the time he's a hero was 43 years. How many people developed lung cancer?
Oh my goodness.
How many people developed coronary heart disease, other problems, throat cancer? It was horrendous, and the tobacco industry worked like crazy to cover this up. And there was even tobacco money going to the American Medical Association. And when Luther Terry, our Surgeon General, came out in 1964, so listen, I have a report, doctors, this is bad news, smoking is causing harm. Even the doctors then weren't that responsive. There weren't doctors at medical school saying, listen, I'm quitting smoking. It's bad. I want to serve as an example. I can't remember a single one who did that.
No.
And then finally, 1978, that's not that long ago. 1978, the American Medical Association has its first pamphlet. It says the harms from smoking. And we didn't get to the tobacco settlement to the 1990s. So smoking is an example. It's another example where there's power and there's money and great harm to the population.
And they did an incredible job. I've said this about the smoking tobacco industry for years, because once they started to hear the rumblings, and then once things began to be exposed, I mean, they were already preparing for it. And okay, well, if people are going to be like, oh, smoking stinks, so we're not going to, so it's no more cigarettes, but we're going to keep you addicted, and we're going to create these vapes that smell like watermelon and cherries, and they're gonna have pretty colors. So so women think it's okay to do. And so our children think it's kind of cool to do. And then they're not going to get in trouble for doing it right outside of the high school or on the bus because it's not going to be nearly as invasive. Like I am still livid about that because my kids' generation, that's what they got. My mother was told it was fine to smoke with me when I was born in 1972.
Did your mom smoke?
Yes.
Did your dad smoke?
No. I mean, I think casually here or there, but my mother smoked throughout her pregnancy with me.
My dad was a chain smoker.
Yeah.
I grew up in Buffalo, New York, in those cold winters. All the windows closed. Our house was probably gray inside.
Every piece of clothing in the closet is completely.
And you know, my dad was a die-hard Bills fan. Oh man, and we're talking the old days, back to Jack Kemp and Jim Ferguson and O.J. Simpson. It goes on, Jim Kelly, and so we had season tickets to the Bills. And my parents didn't make a lot of money, but let me tell you, that last dollar was going to be spent on going to a Bills game, and the entire day was planning and what we're going to do and what we're going to wear. I'll never forget going to Bills games, particularly night games. And we didn't have too many. The Bills were not on Monday Night Football very much because they weren't very good.
Exactly.
But I never forget getting to night games, and I remember the constant smell of tobacco. And I remember looking up at a Bills game and seeing a giant ring of smoke around. And anybody who's my age, remember as a kid going to these games and watching. That's how common smoking was.
It was accepted. It was glamorous in many ways.
Oh yeah.
And I that's what I mean. I give the industry credit for being proactive, for once they got exposed and thinking ahead to have this, much less offensive tool.
Well, they got to a settlement.
Is even more addicting.
They got to a new industry was born. You're right. And I had somebody recently in the office. I'm in practice as an internist and cardiologist. I'm board certified. My office is in Dallas. I had somebody come to my office struggling with lung problems, and they vaped. And I said, I can't explain it any other way. That God designed our lungs and the lungs of all mammals to have clean air go in and clean air go out. Nothing else than clean air. There should be nothing else in the air that goes in. And it should not be a surprise if you intentionally put something in the air, a vaping ether, tobacco smoke, it's going to damage the lungs. Yeah. It should not be hard. But in The Emperor of All Maladies, which is a great book by Mukherjee, he was at the Dana-Farber Institute. It's his first book, and he won the Pulitzer Prize. That should tell you something. Great book. And it's about the history of cancer. Cancer is the emperor of all maladies. He describes this lead surgeon at Johns Hopkins, and he's taking out these lung cancers. And the surgeon is smoking while he's taking out the cancers. If you can remember, this is probably 1950s, 1960s, and all the residents are watching him, and he's teaching them, no, smoking doesn't cause this. The black smoke going in the lungs doesn't cause the blackened cancer coming out. Denying this the entire way, and then he himself dies of lung cancer and still doesn't see it. You can see the parallels today. No, COVID didn't cause the blood clot. That can't be it, or the vaccine. Yet every study shows the spike protein causes blood clots. It's the same denial.
You know what I've realized lately? The clothes I wear at home are actually the ones I live in the most. And for a long time, I didn't think much about that. I just threw on whatever was comfortable. But this spring, I've been wearing Cozy Earth, and it has completely changed how I think about that off-duty time. Their brushed bamboo jogger set has basically become my default. It's one of those outfits that feels amazing the second you put it on, super soft, really breathable, but still looks put together enough if somebody, knocks on your door or I need to run out quickly. Somehow, it just keeps getting softer every single time I wash it. And then there are the Lake House clogs, which I didn't expect to love as much as I do. They're really easy. They just slip on, but they've actually got real support. I can wear them around the house. I can step outside, run a quick errand, and not think twice. What I appreciate about Cozy Earth is that it's not just about comfort in the moment. It is the quality. These are pieces you're going to keep reaching for year after year. And they back that up with a 30-day return policy and even a lifetime warranty. So this spring, give yourself the kind of comfort that lives with you all day, not just the moment you get home. Head to cozyearth.com and use my code SAGE for an exclusive 20% off. That is code SAGE for an exclusive 20% off. And if you see a post-purchase survey, mention that you heard about Cozy Earth right here on the Sage Steele Show. Comfort lives here. If you have a brain right now, you must question. And like I said at the beginning, the lack of trust is where I am right now. And I'm not a doctor and never will be. So you have to figure out what that comfort zone is for you and how are you going to get the information? How are you going to maybe act differently next time when these mandates come down? I think I looked at I guess it wasn't a study, I probably saw it somewhere online, but what shocked me with the vaccine was to learn that pharmaceutical companies had complete immunity from any ill effects of vaccines, whether they were required or not. And I was like, how could they do that with the COVID? I mean, this is intentional, and they wanted fill in the blank because they had themselves completely protected. And then I went, wait a minute. This was an act of Congress in 1986? Years, decades before the COVID-19 pandemic. So that's what what's the why there? The why leading up to 2019 and 2020, okay, that made sense to me. And I'm like, wait, we're going back to 86?
Yeah.
Why? Why did Congress choose to? There's no other industry where there's complete immunity, is there?
Well, is there any liability from, those roofers putting on a house there? Do they have liability if something happens and the roof starts to leak? Are they accountable for Sure they are.
Yes.
A lot of times you get a roof, it'll say 20-year warranty. Well, in our book, Vaccines, Mythology, Ideology, and Reality, we go through this history of vaccines, kind of the good, bad, and the ugly. It really is a gripping story. And it's a lot of characters in there, ones you'll know and recognize, and helps people understand, who is Cotton Mather, Edward Jenner, Louis Pasteur, and, all the way through the modern day, Anthony Fauci. But we get to 1986 in the history of vaccines, and there was a problem with what's called the cellular pertussis vaccine. The children were getting it. They could get brain inflammation, seizures, fever. It was pretty bad. And the manufacturers of the vaccine approached the government and said, listen, we're getting so many lawsuits on this. We need protection. If we don't get protection, we're not going to produce these products. We're pulling out. And Reagan was the president at the time, and HHS and Congress wrote the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Act. And it said vaccines have unavoidable harms. We can't avoid it. Once it's injected, it's like, good luck. It's in the legislation. They have unavoidable harms. Therefore, the manufacturers will be immune from liability, and the government will step in and have a compensation program if anybody's injured. So then we follow this up with, okay, well, where's the compensation? Where's that part of it? And we have a chapter about the U.S. Court of Claims. And it comes up about 12 years after the legislation comes in place. And these cases start to accrue. And the concern is that so many vaccines are given in combination. About 20 vaccines have in their warnings or side effects that they cause brain inflammation. They go into the brain, they cause brain inflammation, causing seizures, and some kids end up having permanent neurologic damage. It's in their package insert. The concern was this rise in autism spectrum disorder. So there was a plaintiff class that said, okay, we're going to bring our case to the U.S. Court of Claims. All these parents, kids with autism, they had the vignettes and what have you. And the government said, okay, we're going to pick out a case as a bellwether case. And the case they pick out is of this little girl, Hannah Poling. And she's a little bit behind in her vaccines because she had other illnesses. And so at around 15 months, she gets a big bundle of vaccines, measles, mumps, and rubella, diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, and the list goes on. And this all occurred for Hannah, I imagine, about 2008 or so. So it's kind of after my kids were born, and could have been around the time your kids, probably before your kids.
My youngest is 06.
Okay, so right around that time. And so, and your child probably got the same battery.
Yep.
Anyhow, Hannah gets really sick afterwards, has a fever, fussy, neurologically is just, something has changed. And then she develops all the classic features of autism. She regresses, she can't speak, and we're talking, profound autism. So what's unique about Hannah Poling is her father is Jonathan Poling. Jonathan Poling is a neurologist at Johns Hopkins. So he's studying his daughter. He actually publishes a case report, identifies actually she had a little enzymatic change in her, what's called mitochondrial function in her muscle. So muscle biopsy, you're studying that, but that was obviously a predisposing factor. And he publishes this peer-reviewed paper about how the vaccines were a clear trigger for his daughter's autism. Well, what does the U.S. Court of Claims do? They read this, they examine it, they have separate adjudicators, and they said, Dr. Poling, we'd like to pull you aside and make a private settlement with you on this. So they settle with Dr. Poling. He leaves Johns Hopkins, he goes into practice in Athens, Georgia, where he still is today. And then they take the rest of the claims and they sweep them away. That's the U.S. government and vaccines. That all occurred circa 2010 or so. I am telling you, the history of vaccines in the United States is dirty business. It's dirty business. If we're talking about childhood vaccines and complications, we have a chapter on the anthrax vaccine. You have to read the book. There's a dirty history behind this. This is unlike other parts of medicine, but to me, it's akin to smoking, or if we were to go further back in history, around 1860 and 1920, believe it or not, all the medicinal products were cocaine, and it was a disaster back then. Vaccines are essentially a 300-year rolling story where there is an ideology, and the ideology goes like this, that mankind is inherently susceptible to infectious diseases. Throughout history, have you ever noticed you can get sick with a cold or a flu, but your dog never gets it? Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
You've never seen a squirrel outside blowing their nose. Never. I mean, it's just humans are susceptible to these illnesses. And because of that, it's an opportunity for mankind in the brilliance of science, the brilliance of vaccinology, to protect ourselves, that we can actually, with our scientific tools, man can improve upon God's natural immunity. Man outdoes God. Vaccines for protection outdo, God Almighty. This is an astounding hubris. But the vaccines aren't perfect. So for this to work, everyone must take them. Without exception, everyone must take them. And if someone is injured or disabled, or if they die from a vaccine, they should accept this for humanity.
Yes.
That is vaccine ideology. And we saw that play out real time with COVID.
I want people to remember that. Some of it is overwhelming, et cetera, but when this industry is completely protected and there's never any chance for accountability, right there.
It's not just protection, it's this religious belief.
It's deeper than that. And that's why I beg of people to question, because you mentioned the roofers that we're hearing that they're messing up my microphones over here. Everyone is protected. Everyone, has accountability, or some way to, if there's a mistake, there's repercussions. There's something. And with this, when you're dealing with human beings, there's not. I was born in 1972. So my grade school years, junior high, high school, everybody could bring peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. It was fine.
Oh, yeah.
There were no peanut butter allergies. nobody even talked about autism. That wasn't a thing,
Yeah.
probably in the medical community, but certainly
No.
not as kids and younger parents like my
Mhm.
parents were. And all of a sudden, it's everywhere. It's nonstop. For a while, Southwest Airlines stopped serving those little bags of peanuts because of the peanut allergies, and
Yeah.
you could get the dust in the air and the whole. There's no way, to me, again, some idiot sports girl,
Mhm.
who just happened to take a minute and go, wait a minute, because look at the vaccine schedule for childhood vaccines that in the early 80s was, you could count on one hand, or at least on not double
Yeah.
digits, and now it's in the 70s.
Mhm.
Is it an obvious correlation to the
It
number of vaccines with everything else
it
we're
it
seeing, in particular autism?
it's almost direct. McCullough Foundation, which is a not-for-profit foundation I formed in 2022, we received a big grant to study this, and we studied it in great detail and have published the most comprehensive report on this. It's called The Determinants of Autism Spectrum Disorder. And we looked at this. The organic rise in autism is real. It's not just early detection. Now, it's true, autism did exist. I mean, I had one patient in my practice who passed away. He was in his 80s, and he had severe autism. He had that autism. Remember Rain Man and Dustin
Yeah,
Hoffman? He
yeah.
had Rain Man, Dustin Hoffman. He had that
Wow.
high mid-tone,
Very noticeable.
very, very noticeable.
Mhm.
And autism is one of the most interesting illnesses or diseases, or what others would term neurodiversity. Do you know so many of profound cases of autism, they have some incredible intellectual talent?
Mhm.
Did you know this?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen numbers, et cetera, but just through
Have you
my
ever met
experience
anybody?
yes, and you're like, "Wait, there's true brilliance here."
Yes, this
And
man,
then
he could just, you could tell he was incredibly disabled. He came in with care workers that helped him. And then
like Rain Man. Watch that movie.
Rain Man,
Yeah.
and she would say, well, who played in the 1946 World Series? And who is the pitcher at the top of the 7th inning? And he would nail it.
Yeah.
And what
It's
pitch did
incredible.
he throw? It's like, what? And recently a patient came in my office, and her son drove her. And he's about 30. And I was with the mother in the exam room, and this 30-year-old man or boy was just literally just wandering around every office room. And I was like, I said, is he going to be okay? She goes, yeah. She goes, he just can't sit still. He's wandering. He can't pay attention. So we had all the phenotypic, characteristics of autism. And after I finished up with him, she goes, he's got a couple real talents. He's a great driver. He drove me here for over an hour. He goes, we live out rurally. He drives tractors and other. I said, really? That's terrific. And he could barely look at me. He was just tough. And he goes, he has another talent. And I said, what's that? He's great with dates. I said, really? She goes, yeah, doctor, when were you born? I said, well, I was born December 29th, 1962. And then he looked at me, he got a big smile on his face, and his eyes just flashed back and forth like this. I go, what's going on? He goes, you were born on a Saturday. I go, you got to be kidding me.
My goodness.
And sure enough, I looked it up. I was born on a Saturday. She goes, he nails it every time.
It's amazing.
And I asked him, how do you do that? He said, I don't know. He says, but every calendar is in my brain.
You can see it.
And I can just spin them backwards, and I can go right to that calendar in my brain, and I can see that your number is right there on the 29th. It's a calendar that he can see in his brain.
Incredible.
It's incredible. So what we learned in the McCullough Foundation report is that autism is clearly on a rise. The CDC has been tracking this for over 25 years. The CDC has an autism spectrum network of 16 centers in the United States. They're carefully chronicling this disaster among the children, and it's rising astronomically. 27% of autism is profound autism, markedly reduced IQ, cannot live alone, screaming, head banging, cannot use the toilet, literally will need lifelong care. That's 27% of this pool that's greatly expanding. Right now, the whole pool size is between 3 and 4%. Some states it's higher, like California, it's over 5%. So this is an important point. Over 1% of California children are severely disabled with autism. And in our book, we do a calculation. Do you know there are more kids severely disabled with autism than there ever was with polio?
Wow.
Autism is way bigger of a public health problem than polio.
And it's fast.
So what do we learn? The kids are born normal. It's very importantly. So they start out normal. There are some predisposing factors. So, and this is happening nowadays, older parents. So a man over 40, a woman over 35, a baby born prematurely before 37 weeks. Remember, we have NICUs that can save the babies. Common genetic variants, but the genetic variants are not pinpoint. They're things that 25 or 50% of us have anyways. There's nothing that's very notable. And then maternal exposures. So if a mother takes, let's say, a serious psychiatric medicine, an antidepressant, heavy antidepressant, and antipsychotic for full 9 months every day, or an anti-seizure medication, it can affect brain development. Not taking a couple capsules of Tylenol.
Right.
Tylenol is not in the picture here. And Tylenol essentially has been completely ruled out of any concern. Those are the predisposing factors. Now the baby's still fine. The baby's born and they're fine. Then they come up to a big battery of vaccines, typically between 1 year and 2 years, and boom, the conversion happens. And it's typically an immediate reaction, sometimes a rash, nausea, vomiting, becoming very flaccid, not feeding, not looking at the parents, a seizure, which is terrifying for the parents to see, seizure, and then regression into autism. So our conclusion of our report, which is the most comprehensive scientific document to date, is that combination vaccines are a risk factor. We don't say cause. Risk factor means we consider all these other variables. Obviously, there's a lot of kids, like my kids and your kids, they took vaccines, they don't have autism. I took tons of vaccines, I don't have autism. So it's not all the children,
Right.
but it's those probably susceptible, probably having a bad reaction, and it happens. So what did we do? We sent our report to Robert F. Kennedy and HHS, all the people, White House, press release. The cadence of this was Kennedy comes out with Trump and Bhattacharya, Macri, and Oz, and they give a press conference September 22nd of 2025. And you can see it's an odd press conference. Trump kind of stumbles. He goes, "We know what causes autism." And everyone goes, "Well, what is it?" He goes, aceta, he can't even pronounce it. What is it called? Oh, acetaminophen. And then classic Trump, he can't stay on script. And he goes, well, the real problem is really the vaccines. So he gets on the vaccines and Kennedy is trying to mop it up. And,
Yes.
oh, it's Tylenol and we should give a little bit more folic. It was the most odd press conference. No one in a second
random.
believed that. There was a huge paper in JAMA in 2022 by Almqvist from Sweden. They analyzed 2 million births in Sweden. Every single capsule of Tylenol of a woman, did she take it? Did she not take it? This is an incredible study. And they even had sibling analysis where the same woman, the same father, same genetics, one baby, the mother had a headache and took some Tylenol. The other pregnancy, she didn't take a single capsule. There's zero relationship with Tylenol and autism.
Why
None.
would they throw that out there then?
Honestly, I think it was a giant misdirection. So
That's too big
Kennedy,
of a misdirection.
Kennedy had promised he's going to have an answer on autism by September of 2022. It looked to me like 2025. It looked like they were ready to come out and tell that we're concerned about the vaccines because, a few months later they trimmed the vaccines. But somebody at the last minute seems like they got a hold of him and said, listen, pin it on Tylenol. That to me, that's what I think. So what happens is we do this McCullough Foundation report. We do a press release on October 27th, a month later, 2025, send it to them 19 days after our report. No discussion. In the middle of the night, the CDC on their website changes and says, we can't rule out the connection between vaccines and autism.
So now, tell me why I should trust the Trump administration, RFK Jr., with any of this, even though I think, yes, it's better than the last administration with how the COVID vaccine was handled, et cetera, and leading up to it. But if they're going to irresponsibly, what it sounds like with Tylenol, come out and say, this is the reason for autism, why should I trust them now?
It's intentional deception. Honestly, I think it's intentional deception. It made Kennedy look so bad. I mean, you could tell.
He's a smart man. Like, why would he
knew.
Accept it and say it?
Even Trump knew. Trump couldn't stay on the script. If you notice, Trump Before you know it, he goes, the real problem is the kids are taking too many vaccines. Trump is right. So what happens 90 days later is Trump, according to his True Social tweet, he gets a hold of Jim O'Neill, who's the acting director of the CDC, and has all these committee meetings. They didn't make any progress. He tells Jim O'Neill, trim the vaccine schedule. So O'Neill just says, like in a stroke of a pen, says, okay, we're just going to trim it down to what Denmark's schedule is. We're going to go from 17 diseases that we're trying to prevent down to 11, and we're going to reduce the number of doses by 55 doses. So it's some vaccine reform. The big worrisome ones are still there. The combos like diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, and MMR. This comes out. And the vaccine freedom community says, yay, at least there's less. And remember, the reason why this is such a big deal, the government sets a vaccine schedule. There's actually laws tied to this. The government sets the vaccine schedule. The vaccine schedule rolls out to the states. Some states said, by law, children must take these to attend school.
Yes.
So this isn't just a casual recommendation. That's the reason why this vaccine stuff is so big.
And the states can cite it and say, no, look.
Right.
This is...
So the schedule gets changed. People cheer. What happens? The American College of Pediatrics, which on their website is directly funded by the vaccine companies, they get together a class of plaintiffs, including the American College of Physicians, the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, of interest. You know who's in the plaintiff class? The autism advocacy societies. And the suit is against Robert F. Kennedy and HHS and the Trump administration, saying what you did to the vaccine schedule is harming public health.
Oh my goodness.
Revert the vaccine schedule back to what it was. And indeed, a liberal judge grants that. So we're actually back to square one.
What was the autism group doing in there?
That's such a... Why... if the party line is vaccines are unrelated to autism, why would an autism society be on the side of giving more vaccines?
More.
It must tie back to funding. I hate to say this.
It has to.
If the vaccine manufacturers are funding these medical groups, are they funding the vaccine support groups so they take this pressure off them so these products can roll? Can you imagine if you sold a product that every human being at a certain age must take? And this product is either purchased by insurance companies, and if people can't afford it, the government buys it. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if the government bought iPhones for all of us? This idea of there's nothing like this in medicine. The government doesn't buy antibiotics for everybody. The government doesn't buy mammograms for everybody. There's something about vaccines. So in our book, we start out with this mythology about how, they're mysteriously presented. There's bold claims. There are a lot of things that just aren't substantiated. When the first vaccines were developed, they didn't even know what was causing the illness. The ideology I've described, but I want people to understand how deep this ideology is. On the front cover, look at this coin. It's a 20-euro coin issued by the Vatican in 2022 in the middle of the pandemic. Okay? And it's a boy assuming the classic tripartite image of a boy about to receive the Eucharist. He's about to receive the body and blood of Jesus Christ in a communion. He's a communicant. But instead of receiving the body and blood of Christ, instead of being saved, he's getting a COVID vaccine on the coin. The vaccine becomes his savior. This is the Vatican. This is the Catholic Church. You can't make this up. This is an astounding revelation about the religiosity of vaccines. Yeah. And people hold them as religious items. They're accepted as articles of faith. When they rolled out, did you see the wild behavior? Did you see Stephen Colbert's show?
Yes,
where
the white...
all these people dress up as vaccine syringes and they're dancing around. Did you see the Super Bowl halftime show around 2010 where there were vaccine syringes floating up in the air and it was about some type of vaccine program?
In 2010?
2010.
That was at the Super Bowl in Dallas?
Yeah, I don't know if it was in Dallas or where it was, but people have brought
Go
that
back
up.
and look at that.
It's like, wait a minute, there is a religiosity around vaccines. And so if you come up to
But it's
people,
subtle.
if I came up to you and said, listen, I want to have a conversation with you about an antibiotic, you'd say, okay, well, let's talk about it. Or I want to talk to you about an antidepressant. Fine. If I said, hey, I want to talk about vaccines, oh my gosh, people are saying, they give you the Heisman. I don't want to talk about it. We have a dinner party coming up this weekend, and my next door neighbor has proudly taken every COVID-19 vaccine and booster. And I guarantee when I show up, his wife, and his wife has too, she will immediately confront me. And she'll say, Dr. McCullough, don't you say a word about vaccines. Don't you say a word. I mean, I'm given the order to even show up, and they're our friends, they're right next door to us. And I'll show up at this party, I guarantee, and before I have my first tonic water, someone will come up, Dr. McCullough, I took the COVID shot and I've got a blood clot in my arm. Can you believe that? I can't use my arm anymore. Dr. McCullough, my uncle took the COVID vaccine and had a cardiac arrest. They had to shock him in church. And then people start bringing up these vignettes.
Yes. They're desperate.
They bring up these vignettes. And
Are you going to get kicked out?
I look at our party host. I said, listen, I am not bringing this up, but you cannot suppress this. So there's a religious viewpoint of vaccines.
I'll give her credit for still remaining friends with you, because many on that side absolutely would not even say that they know you anymore.
Well, it's interesting. So my neighbor, who keeps himself in pretty good shape, is a few years older than me. He's got this wonderful front porch, and we live in a neighborhood like yours where the house is kind of narrow and it's very quaint. And so, I go outside and I run. So I work out, do weights first, I stretch, do weights and everything, then I go run. And at that running stage, I go outside and someone can spot me. So one time he spotted me and he goes, hey, doc, I took my 7th booster. He goes, and I'm well. I said, you know what? Look at me. I took 0 shots. I'm well. What does that tell you? I have another vignette. So when we were presenting, we've done the largest published autopsy study of people who died after the COVID shots. We are at the American Society of Microbiology, a formal medical meeting, about 6,000 attendees. I'm sure Fauci goes and all the vaccine promoters go, all the big companies were there. And we were at our poster and we were describing these vaccine blood clots and heart damage and all these things. And people came by. This one doctor came by, he's older, and he's kind of dragging his arm one side. He looked at the poster, he looked at me, and he goes, I took 5 shots in this arm. He goes, I really can't raise it anymore. I went to therapy and it just never came back. He goes, but if they come out with a booster, I'll take it over here.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
This is the religion part of it.
There's a religion.
That's the cult-like part of it. I mean, you can call it religious. To me, that is cult-like, when you are completely making a decision to ignore what is obvious if your arm is hanging to the ground.
Or how about death? Death is the worst. So the example there is Sean Casten. He's a Democratic member of Congress from Illinois. His daughter, Gwen, he's on social media. Get the vax. It's the only way. I'm getting the vax. I'm proudly getting it. As soon as these come out, I can't wait to have my kids vaccinated. This is the way, what have you. He does all this. His daughter, who's 16, is dead a couple weeks later in bed.
Oh my goodness.
Autopsy. Yeah. Fatal cardiac death.
Did he acknowledge anything?
He comes out. He says, what I've learned from this is we just have to value our time together.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
So people,
I wonder if deep down in their quiet moments.
I don't know, but that's the reason why there's
they'll never acknowledge it if so.
There's no outrage. That's the reason why there's no outrage. Part of it is this blindness that once you've taken it, you can't possibly.
Yes. You can't go back.
Can you imagine if you were a parent and you were to fully recognize that, how horrible you would feel?
No, this is why I understand it. You don't want to go there. And then for many reasons, it is, political. It is just ego of not wanting to admit that you made a mistake, which is why that doctor from the Cleveland Clinic 8 years ago to come out and say, I'm sorry, just for flu, for saying, I didn't even fully comprehend those paper inserts that talk specifically about risks. I didn't share that with you. And I can't imagine the human doctors, the ones that remain in there. I think probably more so than not. I don't want all doctors to get a bad rap because of the actions of not few, but many. That human element as to why you got into medicine in the first place has got to matter. I hope and pray it does. Okay, I have 65 other questions. I know I'm not going to be able to get to them.
We'll go
But
short
the
answers.
childhood vaccine schedule, after back and forth and up and down and changes, based on, let's say, 1972, when I was born, to now 2026. Where are we?
It's back to the biggest schedule ever. So it's right back to where it was.
After they chopped off 55 of them.
They put them back on.
When was that?
That just happened in the last month or two. So it's back. In our report, we conclude there are 12 studies showing a healthy child born today. So it's important. Healthy child today with clean air, clean water, good nutrition, sanitation, and all of the accompaniments of modern living. So we don't have threats like we do in the past. A healthy child born today, 12 studies show, is healthier if they take no vaccines whatsoever. Because think about the Amish, the Mennonites, they don't take vaccines.
Yes.
So that's an important point for today. So many parents will make a determination when their child is born and say, you know what, they're perfectly healthy. I'm going to go, natural for a period of time. The vaccines for children are far safer if they're given individually and given later in life, not during the early critical period of development. The babies are born, they simply need to breastfeed and
food and love and care.
That's it. You get beyond age 4, it becomes far safer. And I think as kids get into their teenage years, there could be certain circumstances where you'd say, okay, they really should take a vaccine. But where I think we're going on this is to risk stratification. So in 2020, one medical association, this is the one to support, by the way, the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons, put out a platform in 2020 saying there should be no mandates whatsoever for any vaccine or any pharmaceutical, no matter what, military, school, employment, nothing should be mandated. Everyone should have a free choice. Where we should go is risk stratification. So from my perspective, if a child is born, they have severe pulmonary disease, they're very, very disabled from a pulmonary perspective, maybe the respiratory vaccines there make a sense, because if they did get diphtheria or they got influenza or RSV, it could be fatal. But for a healthy child, the risks far outweigh the benefits. Same thing as we get to other situations. You're going to go into a military, you're going to be on a submarine and people all around you. Meningitis vaccine makes sense. A child born to parents and they're careful and they're educating their kids and they're not going to get into IV drugs and sex and what have you. These kind of IV drugs and sex vaccines, which are basically the Hep B and the
at a day old that they want you to give your baby,
and the human papillomavirus vaccines, I think they can be deferred. They're just not needed.
I know a lot of people. Riley Gaines, when her baby was born, she came on my show and talked about how the nurses shamed her for saying, "Why do I need to give my barely 1-day-old baby the Hep B vaccine, which is contracted only through sex and IV drug use? Why?" And the nurse, she asked the nurse, and she's like, "Well, look it up and you tell me," and left the room. So again, this is about education, and that it's going to be a few years probably before your daughter or son is going to have the ability to even make a decision that could put them at that kind of risk. So absolutely, we must ask. I found this yesterday and screenshotted it, and this is all stuff this is what I think we need to keep talking about. Unvaccinated children, 0 brain dysfunction, 0 diabetes, 0 behavioral problems, 0 learning disabilities, 0 intellectual disabilities, 0 tics, 0 psychological disabilities. Vaccinated children, and the list is long. Asthma, 4.29 times higher in vaccinated children. Acute and chronic ear infections, 600% more likely with a vaccinated child. Atopic disease, autoimmune disease, neurological disorders, 300 to 616% increase in vaccinated children. ADHD, autism, behavioral disability, developmental delays. It is such a long list. And if you put this out, all of us, there is such a huge risk of then you being deplatformed, canceled, etc. Like, which is why there's the importance of independent media and independent doctors who are doing what you are doing every single day. Can I, and then this is a separate thing. Can I share the story of, I've recently, because I'm still a resident of the state of Florida, and I recently signed up with a concierge doctor. And his name is Dr. James Miller, and he was in Washington State working at the exact hospital where the very first COVID-19 case was diagnosed. And he saw that unvaccinated people just to come in for everyday checkups, or, I broke my leg, they would not treat them. So he started a free clinic in his town in Washington State to just treat everyday unvaccinated people. And you talk about, I don't know if you know him, cancellation and shutdown and silence. And then had been doing and helping with research on ivermectin and hydrochloroquine, and started to administer that to some of his patients. And you talk about they tried to take away his medical license, you name it. He's escaped to the free state of Florida. And what he is doing for people like me and so many others, like, this is something I didn't think I'd have to pay separately for, a concierge service where someone is actually going to listen and share and allow you to make your decision. We went to Italy just last week, and ivermectin. And I called him and asked him, and I got a prescription. And let me tell you about the fight it was to actually have them fill it at CVS and Walgreens. And I got the runaround. It was, they called and said we had it, and then they literally called back, you never get a human, and said, well, we don't have that much, one for you and your husband, but you might call this pharmacy. It was such an incredible lesson in why. Well, wait, why? And to me, it's so clear, and I'll shut up after this. It is, if you do your homework on it, ivermectin and hydrochloroquine, but especially ivermectin, it is cheap to make that drug, right? It's so cheap. And if they disperse it the way that they should to help people, then Big Pharma's not going to make their money. They've got to make this difficult to get to. I have two parents right now, both of my parents dealing with different kinds of cancer.
Oh, no.
There are, and my dad, very, very long time with multiple myeloma and a metastasized
that's a tough
prostate cancer since 9 years of multiple myeloma. He's 80 years old. 14 years with prostate cancer. And my mom, papillary breast cancer. They're both in their late 70s.
Oh, boy.
And this wonderful doctor is the one that told me, look up the potential of ivermectin and what it can do for your parents. Okay, so all of that to say, I'm pissed that it is such a fight just for the information, what they did to Joe Rogan when we started to talk about ivermectin. So, okay, just on the cancer front, what are the potential helpful advantages to ivermectin in cancer?
Well, big news. When you
I just went off there, didn't I? I just went crazy after years of being frustrated and afraid to say it. And I'm sorry, I had to.
She just vented. But after facing this, one of the great things come out of the pandemic is I was honored to join a group led by our founder, Foster Colson in Canada. We formed the Wellness Company.
Yes.
And the Wellness Company is the most exciting corporate business development that came out of the pandemic by a mile. It's a global company. It's doing incredibly well. And we broke through. Listen, you want to buy ivermectin and you want a legal prescription for it, and you go through a checkpoint with the doctor, do it online. Send you a huge supply of it. The medical emergency kits are fabulous.
I have had two.
Fabulous, right? So you could get COVID, but sure, you could get a bladder infection or a yeast infection. And every time I travel, my wife is a source of misadventure. And I can tell you, we have a travel kit and we've used it endless numbers of times to have things. Otherwise, each thing would have been tripped to the urgent care. So the Wellness Company is the response there. And just last week, the Wellness Company announced its first report on cancer. Super important. So we have a combination of ivermectin, mebendazole. So ivermectin is an antiparasitic. Mebendazole is another antiparasitic. Each separately has been studied for cancer and continues to be studied for cancer. Three mechanisms they together exert on cancer cells. They reduce proliferation, they reduce the cancer ability to derive a blood supply, and then they cause the cancer cells to drop out and be cleared out by the system called apoptosis. This is big. And so they're in trial protocols at big centers like UCLA and Hopkins, what have you. But we offer this combination on label to treat neglected parasite infections, which you can get when you eat sushi and things like that. But people have the choice with cancer to get it through the wellness company, but we have them fill out forms and they talk to their doctors about it. Everything's done the right way. And this is all FDA approved dispensing of it. This is a clinically indicated, medically necessary off-label use. So we report on the first 100 or so who go through and they have their scans every 3 months. This is blockbuster. 84% of people who have cancers, and they're like your parents, they're doing all the other stuff, they had 84% had a benefit. Now, about a third, they were in remission, they stayed in remission. Great. Another third basically regressed, they improved. Okay. This is tremendous. The metastases didn't go on. 16% had substantial improvement. And the other remainder, about 15, 16%, it got worse. So it's a fair study. Some people do get worse. But this is very safe. About 25% had some side effects, all minor. The safety profile's well known. So I've been out in the media saying, listen, this is right in the lane for Robert F. Kennedy and Dr. Jay Bhattacharya. Do a large government prospective double-blind randomized placebo-controlled trial.
All the things that they did not do for the COVID-19 vaccine or many other vaccines.
But in the meantime, patients with cancer are not waiting. They can go to the wellness company, go through the program. It's available to people.
Please get specific, though, on these drugs with radiation, with chemotherapy. So it's in conjunction with, not by itself.
Conjunction with, and the caveat is make sure your doctors know about it. The main thing to watch is we look for liver function tests, and this is very exciting.
It's huge. It's huge.
For UCLA, Cedars-Sinai is studying ivermectin in advanced breast cancer. Hopkins is studying mebendazole in brain and spinal cord cancers. But we broadly studied it in patients who had prostate in men, that was common, breast in women, and then lung cancer, but it looks across all the solid organ cancers. Very favorable. And a lot of people say, listen, I've got cancer, I don't have too much time left. Why not give it a shot?
You have to. Why not? If the percentages, and it's an actual study, not a complete biased one, right?
Well, it's called patient-reported outcomes. So we asked patients to be honest with us. The next step is to gather all the scans and what have you and do independent adjudication. But, patient-reported outcomes in medicine are considered legit as long as people are being honest with us. And the fact that 15% of people got worse, that fits. The fact that people had some side effects.
But just tell us that.
Yeah.
Give us the pamphlet. Again, just let us then make our own decision as to, do we want to just stick with the traditional medicine? Fine. I understand there's fears, and especially of a certain generation. My parents' age, 79 and 76, this is the only way that it's ever been done. And so there's some discomfort in trying new things and changing, which is why so many of them went straight to get that, the vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine right away. But just ask. And if you aren't getting, I think we know in our guts, if we're not getting clear answers from our doctor, giving us both the good and the bad, leave. I want to also ask you about the prevalence of so many patients of all ages, but especially parents and pediatricians, who, if you ask about the possibility of not taking this vaccine, questions you have about potential, ill effects of a vaccine, that you'll be walked right out of a pediatrician's office or general practitioner. It depends what it is. But that is something that I hope people say, wait, if I can't ask a question, you got to find a new practice. But how is it okay that patients are being told to leave for saying, you know what, I'm going to wait a couple years on this Hep B vaccine for my one-day-old baby, and then they make you leave? What do you tell those parents?
It's stunning. Well, there are now pediatric groups, you can find them, that say, listen, it's vaccine choice. It's freedom of choice. In Texas, we have medical, religious, and philosophical exemptions. So you can fill out a form, get it notarized, file it with the school, never take another vaccine.
For school?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't need
I
it.
guess the people from back in the day like me who had the private employers, at the ESPN, the Disney, who are allowed to say, you know what, your religious exemption and your medical exemption, no, sorry, keep going. So that makes me happy that we're seeing more, especially in schools where parents have a
Believe it or
choice.
not, in Texas, do you know where the problem is for the parents? Private schools.
Really?
There's some private schools say, no, you have to take all the vaccines. We're not following the state. So, but regarding the doctor's office, and this is important, I'd call ahead of time and say, listen, is there freedom here with vaccines, or do you have a requirement? RFK is trying to eliminate all the pharmaceutical bonuses the doctors are getting in the pediatric office for giving shots. So once you remove all that financial incentives, the doctors may ease up. And I think market demands will play out. But there was a New England Journal of Medicine vignette of an African family from Africa. I think they were in Boston. And they already had one child with autism after the vaccines. And they had the next child coming up. And by the way, a sibling with autism is a risk that the next one will get it, right?
Okay.
And so this child had every other vaccine. So it's not like they rejected vaccines. And they came up for the issue of the MMR vaccine. And they talked with the doctor and said, listen, our first child that didn't turn out too good, can we pass on this? The question in the vignette is, as a doctor, would you throw this person out of your practice? You know what the answer was? Over a third of the time, the doctor said, yeah, kick him out.
Gosh.
Kick him out. This is stunning. I mean, can you imagine having a concern like this? And this family was not rejecting vaccines. They had a very legitimate concern.
What's the oath you take as doctors, I mean, just in your soul. When I presume the whole point of it is because you have a compassion to help others. Where did that go?
Not when it comes to vaccines. This is
That's the difference.
This is a 300-year.
And is that how they rationalize it? Because it's over here.
Yeah,
but the
it's
rest
vaccines.
of it,
Everything is different, but vaccines, it's a deeply held religious belief. Remember, a lot of doctors are very distant from vaccines. I personally have never ordered one. I've never administered one. We don't really have any classes on vaccines because it's a government schedule. It's a government schedule. The nurses and pharmacists give it. So for many doctors, eye surgeons, orthopedics, medical specialists, vaccination is far away from what we do. It's in the background. And I think that's part of the problem.
do you feel like the information is being dispersed and is accessible, more accessible now, I guess, than in 2020, 2021, right? But how much further do we need to go?
But not to the doctors. Listen, you take any major medical journal and you say, I want to find out about the major fatal side effects of vaccines. Can't find it. You have to really search obscure journals, the mainline journals.
This is why, but what do people do now? They diagnose themselves online and on AI. And so and you can really test AI and you can put certain things in and it's amazing what does and does not come up. So the fact that you have to keep digging for it and just following people like you, it's fascinating because obviously you became, more famous to those of us peasants over the last several years with vaccines and being, how many times were you on Fox News? Have you been on Fox News?
I think I was on hundreds of times. I was I still am a frequent contributor on the Ingram Angle.
Yep.
I go on with Liz McDonald on Fox Business. I've been on Tucker Carlson's Long Show, his main news program when he's on the news.
Newsmax,
Sean
probably
Hannity,
News Nation.
Newsmax, yeah.
Let me ask you a question. CNN?
Never.
Never once.
Not once.
MSNBC?
Never. I'm the first person to publish a peer-reviewed protocol on how to treat COVID-19 at home to prevent hospitalization and death. I'm the first to discover how to handle problems from the vaccine and from long COVID, handling the spike detoxification. We formed a company, the wellness company, over this. No invitation to even review this. This is a major advancement.
What does that tell you?
It's a major advancement. Well, Tucker Carlson came out and said, if a company has an advertising contract with a station, let's say Pfizer, and they're promoting the Pfizer products, they grab control over the entire content. That station will never have a program on side effects of any drug in the same class as these Pfizer products.
Those dollars are right there
Captured.
as well. Absolutely.
Captured.
Well, keep that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, as well. Um, last question, detailed question about the vaccines is vaccine injuries. If you believe you have been vaccine injured, what do you do?
At this point in time, doctors still should report this to the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, VAERS. You can report it independently. I reported patients this week. As almost every week in my practice, more patients come in. The first few pages are who you are, who's the doctor, where's the office, where were you hospitalized, what happened, what vaccine doses did you take, what have you. So when these submissions go to the CDC, these VAERS submissions, they have everything. There's no excuses. So when the CDC says, well, we're not sure if they're correlated or not, they could have called. They could have gotten the records. They can investigate. So VAERS has accumulated. You'll be shocked with this.
Tell your doctor.
Yeah, tell your doctor, report it to VAERS. And what most patients are going to do is, following the peer-reviewed literature, they're going to go to the wellness company and they're going to get the Ultimate Spike Detox. The Ultimate Spike Detox is high-dose, medicinal-grade nattokinase, bromelain, curcumin, 4 minor ingredients. The nattokinase and bromelain have been shown in preclinical studies, and we have clinical studies now to confirm this by correlates. It dissolves the spike protein that's getting stuck in the body.
So you have to. So I got the J&J, the one and done shot in September of 2021, and then in order to stay employed at ESPN and Disney, I had to get one booster shot before then my lawsuit ended, etc. So that was now 4 years ago. 4 years ago.
You'd like to think this is out of your body. Don't forget, J&J's making a massive amount of this spike protein. Massive. So the amount you get with the vaccine is maybe 10 to 100-fold what you get with the virus. So you're loaded with this stuff.
So is it still in me?
We don't know, but there's a test you can do to find out. So if you go to LabCorp, Labs on Demand, and you can do this yourself. LabCorp, by the way, opened this up to the public because the doctors wouldn't order this. So LabCorp is a major lab company. They know this is important. So go to labcorp.com, Labs on Demand, click Infectious Diseases and Immunity, and click on COVID antibody test. Pay $69, get a user ID and password, pay for it, and you'll pick the LabCorp office, go in there and get your test.
Okay.
The next day, you'll get the result and you'll get a number. And the number is the antibodies against the spike protein from the infection and from the vaccine. Now, for sure you're loaded from the vaccine, and you may have had the infection as well. If you have antibodies...
I got the infection like a doozy 2 weeks after I got the vaccine. Okay. I was on my you-know-what.
So that told you the vaccine didn't work.
It's great.
So when you have antibodies against the ball, that's called nucleocapsid antibodies. They should be positive in you. But you're going to be interested in how high the antibodies are against the spike protein. So before the pandemic, all of us on this numerical scale were less than 0.8. We'd never been exposed to it. Now, the average person who gets the infection, like my wife, who's perfectly fine, her number came out 400. My co-author, John Leake, 600. That's fine. Anything less than 1,000 means you've had immunologic exposure to it, but it's not in the human body. Our research suggests when the number against the spike protein gets to over 5,000 units per ml, we're finding spike protein in the bloodstream.
Okay.
Meaning it still can cause blood clots, disease, and problems. 10,000, 15,000, 25,000, we see cardiac arrests, heart failure, cancer, all kinds of problems. So everybody should get a spike antibody test. In research now, we're now going to be directly measuring the spike itself. So my patients have access to this. We'll be able to directly measure the spike. But the point is, if you're below 1,000, I don't think you need to do anything. If you're above 1,000, which I was, by the way, just from getting the infection, I went on the Ultimate Spike Detox. And you take this, on the labels, 2 capsules twice a day on an empty stomach. So if you go to twc.health, my promo code is Focal Points. Do you have a promo code or probably not, huh?
Yeah. Actually,
what's yours, Sage?
I think it's just Sage.
Yeah, go to twc.health, promo code SAGE, support this show, and you get the Ultimate Spike Detox, 2 capsules twice a day on an empty stomach. I think an ideal time to take, any one of you adults who get up in the middle of the night to use the restroom, your stomach's empty, take a couple before you go back to bed. Take another couple when you get up in the morning. That's what I did. And this will slowly allow the body to get rid of the spike protein. It takes about a year. Another tip and a good way to get rid of spike protein and get rid of the messenger RNA vaccine. So your J&J vaccine, that should be out of your body. But if you took Pfizer and Moderna, that still could be in your body, the messenger RNA. Another great way to get rid of it, and you're going to love this because you're who you are, is sweating. So I think that's the reason why ultimately the athletes, after the initial risk of sudden death that we saw in Europe, the athletes, by the way, if you notice, have done great. I think they've sweated all of this spike protein out of them and all of the messenger RNA out of them.
I have a lot of regrets about not asking enough questions then. A ton of regrets about not asking enough questions when my kids were babies, starting in 2002, 2, 4, and 6. And you do what you think is best at that moment. Now we have the education, but I regret and I fear that you've done so much. You are changing lives every single day. And I think there's millions of us who are so grateful for you and what you're doing. What regrets do you have?
Yeah, I had a chance to testify in the U.S. Senate November 19th of 2020. This is before the vaccines come out. And I had previously published an op-ed in The Hill in August of 2020. And the title of that op-ed, and just myself and Scott Atlas were chosen to write there, as doctors to inform our government what's going on. I had written an op-ed called The Great Gamble of the COVID-19 Vaccine Development Program. I thought it was a gamble to do this. The genetic code for the lethal part of the virus, to inject that into people and give a free run of this fatal protein in people's body, was reckless. Maybe people fit and strong like you could take it, but can you imagine grandmothers and grandfathers, people with genetic clotting disorders or weakened hearts? I had one patient who took the vaccine. He literally had a cardiac arrest in a matter of hours, needed a heart transplant. So it was a disaster to propose this, and under oath at the very end of my session, which was about early treatment, a press release was presented to us, and it was Pfizer's press release. And it said, do any of the panelists have any reservations regarding the COVID vaccine? And I was muzzled in an N95 mask in an empty U.S. Senate chamber, and I stayed quiet. That's my regret. I should have pulled off that mask and said, I have concerns. I think these vaccines are not going to be safe, and I don't think they're going to work. It was in the back of my mind, but I didn't have the courage in the run-up to this vaccine. There was so much tension around this vaccine. We didn't know if it was going to work or not work. We all hoped it was going to work. Every person wanted to think that this was going to work. The entire media, the entire world was praying this was going to work, but it was a colossal failure. And if I've learned anything is not to be afraid of predicting failure. You can always couch things, but I should have leveled with America, and I didn't.
Is that why you've done it to this level? And it's cost you a lot, probably not just financially, in other ways with personal relationships. But it sounds like you've never forgotten that feeling of not having the courage to do what was right in that moment.
And the symbolism of just being absolutely muzzled. And there was so much going on. I mean,
Sure.
I was presenting the first version of the McCullough protocol. We were breaking the news to America that we could treat COVID to reduce hospitalization and death. And it didn't depend on any single drug. It was using drugs in combination. It's published in a very good journal, American Journal of Medicine. And there was so much tension. And that hearing, after I couldn't sleep the night before, and afterwards I felt there was so much adrenaline in my body. The next day, I just was astounded what happened. The minority witness who went up against myself and my panelists was Ashish Jha, who was the dean of public health at Brown University, who became Biden's White House coronavirus coordinator. He had a pre-written op-ed that was published in the New York Times about me and my panelists, Harvey Risch and George Fareed, calling us snake oil salesmen. Now, I'm the most published person in my field in the world in history. In terms of COVID now, in COVID vaccine safety, I am the world's authority. I've published more on this. I've given more analyses, more presentation. Can you believe that someone at my stature was called a snake oil salesman in the New York Times?
My God.
And then the LA Times, I was called a quack, and it kept going and going. Wide open defamation. It's someone at my level, full professor of medicine. It was beyond belief. I couldn't believe what was going on. So over time, as the data emerged and the vaccines were clearly unsafe and they were not working, I was careful. I cited the data. I've published the best I can. Under oath, I answered questions in the Texas Senate. Later on, I suffered professional reprisal for my official testimony under oath. And this should be a real warning to anybody who's a nurse, a doctor, a public media figure, an engineer, anyone called under oath to serve the country based on their responses to the best of their ability can suffer tremendous professional reprisal.
Yes. I am so honored and so excited to read these. Have you ever talked to Anthony Fauci?
He's been invited to every one of my U.S. Senate testimony, and then in my House testimony, he requested closed doors one day ahead of me. So I testified the next day, and he was already done, and I was in. He's never faced me in the U.S. Senate. He's supposed to. And by the way, the last time I testified in May of 2025, and this was about heart damage, and we've produced an official government report, this Homeland Security, Government Affairs, the Permanent Subcommittee for Investigations, a permanent report. Even in that hearing, guess who's a no-show? Robert F. Kennedy. What is he having going on that's so important that we have a Senate hearing on a vaccine side effect and he doesn't show up?
Wow.
This is mind-boggling.
This is what he ran on when he was running against Trump.
It's mind-boggling.
And then alongside Trump. What would you say to Anthony Fauci right now today?
I would say that a man who seeks 10 years of clemency, which he did, by the way, to get a pardon, it's not handed out without a request. He approached Biden for 10 years pardon for crimes he knew he committed. He knew he committed. That's the reason why he asked for clemency. I would tell him, listen, the world understands that Fauci has committed 2 crimes. One is fraudulent concealment. He intentionally concealed the origins of SARS-CoV-2 from his funded projects in Wuhan. It's fraudulent concealment. If we would have known what the story was originally, I think we could have done better in our pandemic response. And the second major crime I think he committed is mass negligent homicide by two mechanisms. First, he worked to suppress our efforts at publishing and promulgating early treatment protocols, which worked to get people through the illness. And secondly, he relentlessly promoted unsafe vaccines that took hundreds of thousands of American lives and millions of lives worldwide. It's been the greatest biological catastrophe mankind has ever seen. And largely, Fauci is responsible for orchestrating this on the world.
And what would you say to RFK Jr.?
I'd tell him, I understand because I've talked to him about it. I understand this idea that when you're in office, you have a reporting relationship, in his case to the president. He's one of 15 cabinet members, and that he serves at the pleasure of the president. But there are some things in life that are so important that we cannot have the president make the call. And when it comes to vaccine safety, it's not the president's call. And I'll just say it more simply. If I was the Secretary of Health and Human Services, I'd tell him, listen, I'm pulling the COVID vaccines off the market. I'm doing it. It's not your call. Too bad. Too bad. It's the call, particularly, now Kennedy may not feel empowered to do that because he's not a doctor, but I would say, listen, I'm a doctor with medical authority. I have the authority from a medical perspective to do this, and I'm going to do it. Kennedy has the legal authority to do it, and Marty Makary under him and FDA, and they won't do it. In fact, they didn't even talk about the vaccines or even show up to a hearing. So they are in line with the president, and it really doesn't matter because myself and you and so many others, we ended this vaccine campaign. Yes. No one's taking these shots. The public knows this. Recent music survey shows 56% of Americans know the vaccines have caused large numbers of deaths. They've got nowhere to hide.
You are a godsend. Thank you. Thank you for your courage and for inspiring millions of people like me to no longer be silent. I
Thank
have
you.
some reading to do. Thank you.